Overwatch news has been pretty crazy this week, and the devs have been sending mixed messages that makes it hard to understand what's actually coming and what their plans are, but I think I can make sense of it by connecting a couple different statements together and reading between the lines a little bit. Their big PvP live stream really just showed us new maps and 5v5, but the real details were buried inside a pair of AMAs. We're gonna get into breaking all of that down, but first, a quick message from today's video sponsor. All right, men, it's time to admit it. We smell and need to shave. That's why you, just like I, need Manscaped in your life. Listen, there's all sorts of stuff they'd like me to tell you about Manscaped, but the most important thing to me is that I became a customer in 2019 and haven't looked back. Not only do I recommend Manscaped, I think it's a life essential. Boomers like me have been shaving south of the border forever, and before Manscaped, it was about as terrifying as juggling chainsaws. Not pretty. But you young guns don't know how good you got it. Here we're taking a look at the Lawnmower 4.0. This thing is a beast. It's a whole new balls game. You're damn right. All right, you see this? This is skin-safe technology, this layer on top, which makes it super easy to use and safe even on sensitive areas. So I'm gonna just pull up some sensitive skin here that normally, if I were to try to shave my arm like this, I'd be terrified of the damage that I potentially could do to my skin. You know, there's other sensitive skin on your body that you don't want to hurt when shaving, and this you can definitely feel safe when using. I barely can try to hurt myself with this. In fact, it's almost like a light massage. It's waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. It has a awesome charging base, and if you click the power button 3 times, it'll go into safe mode, so it won't turn on in your backpack, so you can avoid having an awkward conversation with the girl you just met. You know the saying, if you know you're gonna have visitors over, you should clean up the house a little bit first so it's presentable. Don't forget the basement. Head over right now, manscaped.com/Overwatch, and use Overwatch 20 at checkout to get 20% off and free shipping. Why juggle with chainsaws ever again? Okay, so much to cover. The big live stream was kind of confusing, but you can get a grip on playing on the new Overwatch 2 settings by utilizing this workshop mod that Dab and Cactus Puppy put together, which implements all the suggested changes so far. The reworks to the tanks and the hero passives are all included, along with 5v5, so all you need to do is either create a custom game and import this code, or join somebody else's, because a lot of players are trying to try out this new version of Overwatch. A reminder for console players, I oftentimes see comments that the workshop isn't on console, and I think players might not know that it is on console, but you have to dig to go find it into the custom match settings. Every platform can access any workshop code, so you can enjoy trying it out yourself. And also as well, the background footage of today's video, I'm gonna show clips from a handful of top-level creators who really try to min-max these settings so far, testing out how the game works, and you can follow their links in the description to go see the rest of their videos. In future, we will talk more to discuss the ramifications of 5v5, but I don't want to get too specific in this video because so much is still subject to change, and I'll dedicate a separate video to discussing it more in depth. I wanted to quickly recap some other outside news that have been circling around Overwatch that are important to consider, and then get into digging through the developers' comments on everything. Okay, a few bits of information just for context of what's going on with Overwatch right now. Blizzcon is canceled this year, which isn't too much of a surprise. They're going to do another global style event with smaller gatherings early next year, and well, I think that just gives them more flexibility, and there's a chance that maybe the concept of BlizzCon just adapts to this new scheduling cadence. But also as well, on top of that, we know that Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2 are not set to launch in 2021. That was confirmed in the Activision shareholder meeting, which doesn't rule out the games for early next year, but it gives us a better sense of when to expect Overwatch 2 overall, and important context when digging through the devs' ambitions of what they're adding to Overwatch 1 on the march towards Overwatch 2. Another important news item for Overwatch 1 is that there was a massive hacker ban wave. And when I say massive, 10,000 accounts were banned in a single day. Prior to that, the devs admitted that they were manually banning, it seems, and screening 1,000 accounts per week, but seemingly have made strides in combating the hackers yet again. And although they don't want to explain how they did it, when they were doing it, or how they're going about it, because that just makes it easier for the hackers to change how they're doing things. At the same time, they do want to take credit when they think they're standing a good fighting chance against them, it seems. Hopefully some of those wackier hacks that we were showing you a couple of videos ago, like Reinhardt auto shielding, hopefully they're cleaning that up. That's a pretty important thing to do before the sequel drops, to try to get a grip on that. Keeping in mind the timeline for Overwatch 2 might be as early as 7 months, or perhaps as many as 12. I wouldn't anticipate a beta being much longer than that, because they seem fairly committed to communicating about every month. In the creator AMA, they said that they're going to want to keep communications flowing with perhaps a developer update every month or every other month. And my question is, what's the advantage of doing that if the game's going to be like 2 years away? Right? That doesn't seem like a smart strategy, having around a year of lead up time for your marketing and everything to build up and get feedback on the decisions they're making so they have time to adjust course. That seems like a reasonable aiming point. Keep in mind as well, a lot of these changes have been done for a long time. It's always difficult to try to get a grip on what that is with Blizzard, but remember, at BlizzCon, the footage they showed us then was already many months old, right? They'd been making that BlizzCon promo for quite a while. There was evidence of them using like the old version of Soldier, for example. And at the time, they didn't mention 5v5 at all, but it was pretty obviously 5v5. They just didn't really talk about PvP at the time. Maybe they were still considering it at that point, but by the time they're ready to announce it this week, it's not even like a debate with the community. It's more like, well, we're doing this and we're redesigning the whole game around it. So that means finalizing that decision could have been closer to now, but it also could have been like last year, frankly. There's evidence to suggest that that may have been the case, especially when you think of, well, they were already trying the 1-3-2 experiment. How long did they test 5v5 before they decided that's enough? It's all very confusing. Okay, sorry. We're in the weeds a little bit already. All that is important when trying to think about the cadence of what we should expect for the game and what's being added. So the first major elephant in the room for me is that Aaron said that there was going to be a big feature as big as anything they've ever added into Overwatch 1, and then didn't mention it at all. In the AMA, he had said this: we have several exciting things coming to Overwatch. As far as rough estimates go, one large feature will be announced somewhere in the time frame between soon and really soon. You see how some of this AMA stuff can get a little frustrating when we get answers like that? I mean, what does this even mean? Well, I'll tell you what. I think he's using the same Blizzardisms that Jeff Kaplan used to use, where if Jeff were to say something is happening really soon, that typically means like in a week or two in a close upcoming patch. Whereas Blizzard soon could be like years. That's soon TM. That's like a wink and a nod. It's not actually soon at all. It's a long time. Actually soon might be a couple months, and really soon is a couple weeks. So I think it's safe to say at least by the next major event, those systems should come in. What are the best guesses for that? Well, in the AMAs, the devs essentially confirmed clans are eventually coming, but sounds more like an Overwatch 2 thing, especially when you consider what you would use them for. Finding friend groups to play PvE missions with, that makes sense. Probably an Overwatch 2 thing. I don't think it's coming to Overwatch 1 yet, because they had confirmed that tournaments are not coming. Big sad on my part. So what else could there be? Well, they did also admit that a scoreboard and stats revamp are coming, and they mentioned it in multiple different instances. So as an example, Aaron Keller said that they're no longer against displaying publicly players' scoreboard performance to the rest of the team. That originally was something that they intentionally hid from the player base to try to like reduce toxicity or be different than Call of Duty or just be different altogether. But they've had a philosophy change on that. And then also one of the biggest glaring questions that I tried to hammer home, and in the Reddit AMA they did as well, is Smurf accounts. There's a combination of decay systems to make it easier to come back to the game, but also more accurate and quick stat tracking systems to help get players closer to their skill level peers faster. I think there's a good chance that that type of stats overhaul is what's going into Overwatch 1, because I'm running out of ideas of what they could meaningfully add to the game if it's not that, because everything else like requires Overwatch 2 to make sense. You would think what they would add to Overwatch 1 is the things that could help your gameplay today, as opposed to just future-proof it for when the Overwatch 2 content comes out. Also, it's like the only feature they didn't deny. So as an example, here are some things that they said that they are interested in, which means it might come for Overwatch 2. An update to the endorsement system, a ping system similar to Apex, crossplay and cross progression, but all those things they mentioned in a very ambitious light, as in it's on the board but not high on the list. Conversely, the stats system, they said they want to give players better tools in Overwatch 2 to look at in-game performance, including match history, and they're also looking at further ways to celebrate positive plays made in a fight. So that's slated for Overwatch 2, but dealing with alt accounts and more accurately rating players, I think could make sense as the first stepping stone in that line coming into Overwatch 1. And if it's not that, guys, honestly, search me, because that's the best guess I got. I'm running out of good ideas. If it's something else, it's going to be a massive surprise. Otherwise confirmed, there will be a beta for the game. And remember, as far as the shareholders are concerned, the release will be sometime next year, but that's when they earn money from it. A beta might be invite only and could be several months before the launch, which means it's still in the cards that a beta could be this year, depending on how long of a beta they want to have. It's still a little murky how they're handling the whole evolution process of the Overwatch PvP revamp and the Overwatch 2 PvE expansion standalone sequel. It's all very confusing. But what they have been very clear on, I want to now finish the video talking about 5v5 and their goals for that and what you can expect for the Overwatch PvP revamp, which seemed kind of vague and nebulous, but the rules that they're trying to operate by are pretty clear. So as an example, Jeff Goodman essentially used the same language that I used in a previous video about the Brawler rework, which I think, based on the reception being as mixed as it is, I think they would save themselves a lot of hassle by actually renaming the role and flat out committing we are fully reworking this role, because that'll make more sense to players, I think. Any main tank type hero that you think of for Overwatch 1 probably gets more offensive, and then any distinct off-tank character from Overwatch 1 will get more defensive. Realistically, so far in the testing, main tanks look pretty bad at the moment, but it's all subject to change on how they're going to balance it. At the moment, I think Zarya looks like the most reliable do-everything tank based on the gameplay I've seen, but it's all going to depend on the numbers. A lot of heroes are getting reworked, and a lot of concepts are just flat out getting nerfed. They started talking about this in the live stream, but then clarified in the AMAs. They feel more comfortable with tanks having some CC, or a character like Ana, they're okay with her CC, but McCree's Flash and May's Full Freeze, and other characters, especially DPS, that have CC, they're looking to rework in some way. So Doomfist is likely to get a full-out rework, and Sombra, it sounds like they're having a little bit of trouble with at the moment, figuring out how they want to land her. One test they explained that they did try was giving her like a stealth backstab style, which if you play Dota 2 is what Riki is like, where you come out of the shadows from Invis and do extra damage if you shoot a target in the back. And the philosophy of that was to try to minimize her hacking skills or her disable, and instead make her more lethal. But that lost the identity of Sombra a little bit, so it doesn't sound that that's a likely thing they're going to stick to. One that sounds a little bit more clear is a rework to Bastion, who's a character that pretty badly needed 2 tanks in order to function, because if he can't move and he's a sitting duck, it's pretty tough to find situations where you can find a more or less fair duel if there's going to be less MOBA elements for him to survive and operate in. So because of that, they suggested a rework such as shaving down the severity of his kit, and perhaps when he's in sentry mode with the big turret up, he gets some move speed back, but maybe not as severe with how much damage he does. They did go into more depth in all of these things, but the truth is so much of it is subject to change. It's quite academic at this point, but you can see how concepts like Sombra, who probably is most powerful manipulating the tank line, and you maybe won't want that one tank that just freely gets hacked repeatedly due to the kind of flanking nature of 5v5 in Overwatch 2. And then furthermore, Bastion, just the devs flat out admitted, wasn't really balanceable for Overwatch 1, at least not for all skill tiers. He's always been very boom or bust, dependent on the meta state or on the knowledge of how to beat him, which can have a very severe knowledge curve. And it sounds like they're going to flatten him out a bit, kind of how they've done to most of the heroes, to be honest. I think it's safe to assume that Bastion will fit into the hierarchy of ranged hit scans like a soldier variant, as opposed to being the turret boom or bust type hero that we're used to him being in Overwatch 1. And that kind of goes to their whole philosophy of Overwatch 2 thus far. I have seen a lot of comments that are afraid that Overwatch is going to be losing its identity. The devs did go to define that, yes, although Overwatch 2 might orient itself more towards an FPS than before, it's still going to be a hero shooter. And I keep using that term without maybe fully defining it, but I think it's safe to say that abilities will be really strong in the game. Perhaps not as many stuns and chain CCs, they want to bring that back, but easy to land damage, things to cast and do. Although there's less barriers and some of the crowd control options go away, I think there's still going to be a lot of non-straight up FPS in the game, like Ryan's hammer or Briggs' abilities, which is another character that they didn't mention at all, and I'm a little curious because she is kind of like CC plus heals the character. I think we already kind of get a taste of what they're looking for when they give D.Va that remech kill. That's a very Overwatch 2 style design, I feel. And you can expect the tank heroes to get buffed up to be multi-purpose and self-sufficient as one player, but I would expect a similar level of lethality from the 4 squishes on the map at the same time. Particularly noticing that there's one less tank to even get in the way of your abilities, which is the thing that I know from watching Samito's video discussing this. At the moment anyway, duelist type characters run 5v5. So if you could run in and take a duel, there just is so little to stop you. It like doesn't matter what tank you pick, basically. There will be openings to go take duels straight up. So if you as a player are good at that, or your character is good at that, there at the moment looks to be a heavy bias towards that style of play, which the controversial part of this, I don't think anyone's mentioned. And I'm saving this for my next video. The biggest controversy here was misguided about off tanks. Most people just didn't actually hear what the devs were saying. There's a much bigger problem that I'm going to go into talk about in my next video, so be sure to hit the bell icon to actually get notified when we discuss 5v5, the downsides. Get the video sent directly to your cell phone. I want to shout out 2 things before we go. 1, the next mastery guide that I want to make is for Ana. So I need you guys to send in Ana gameplay where you thought you played well but lost anyway. And you do so by easily filling out the Google form linked in the description. And hey, while you're down there, be sure to click on our link for manscaped.com/Overwatch and use code Overwatch20 at checkout to get 20% off your order and free shipping. As I said in the video, I'm a big believer of Manscaped. It's a shaving meta game changer, I'm telling you. So check that out, linked in the description. But that's been it for me. I've been Frito for Your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.